Hello, welcome to this introduction to this series of videos where I'm just going to give you a run through of my new book, Yoga and Somatics for Immune and Respiratory Health. Very pleased to be able to bring this to you after it came to fruition, originally from a course that I taught for Yoga Campus as soon as lockdown happened from COVID-19 pandemic. And I set up a course for teaching yoga for immune and respiratory health. And then the book came from that content, which I wrote with my colleague who also assists on the course with me, Leonie Taylor. And beautifully, very grateful for a foreword by lovely Joanne Avison, who wrote the wonderful book, Yoga, Fascia and Anatomy. So in this session, we'll just take a little look around what's in the book, the kind of flavor of it. And then in subsequent videos, I'll go through each part and a little overview of the content itself. So here is first of all, the kind of first opening plate. Gives you an idea here of also some of just the artwork that starts each section for that feeling of what it is to practice and bring somatics into yoga, which is kind of a fluid form, often with quite primal movements, quite explorative. So example here is something that's very primal, kind of reptilian. And you can see the content in the contents sheet here. The book is, as is the course, is broken down into 6 sections. So it's kind of curated in terms of themes. The first is healthy defenses. So looking at the immune and respiratory systems, how they operate together. That brings in physical practice of somatic and loosening sequences. So each section has a kind of overview, practices that go with that, and then subtle practices as well. So the first for that part is mindfulness of breathing. So really coming into that awareness, which we can also do within practice. And this is where kind of the slowing exploration of somatic practices really comes in to be able to offer that mindfulness of breathing with movement. So there's a lot of undulating and spine undulations throughout the book as well as a supportive for that. We then move through themes of stress and inflammation, absolutely crucial, particularly where we find ourselves as a modern human. Fluid adaptations, looking at the fluid body, which is in yoga canon is part of the breath body, the pranamaya kosha, but also lymphatics, interstitial, and bringing in that in, what is it to move with fluidity? So brings in kind of primal motions there as well, kind of lunging, stepping, squatting. And then mindful boundaries, particularly as we're looking at a practice that ties in to emotional need, not just looking physically what we can do, but also looking at the boundaries in terms of the boundaries of the interface of the lungs, and in terms of that which is the function of the immune system. And then the practice comes up into standing, into full breathing and protective support. So you can see the practices go through a story as well, from the ground up towards standing, and then we make our way back down again. The 5th section is on embodied awareness, so very much about our sensory processing. It brings back trauma themes are moved throughout the book, and this brings back in those themes, and then comes down to rest and recovery. So restorative somatics into restorative practices. So we're retaining fluidity, lymphatic movement before coming into rest. So we're recognizing that for the modern human, we can get quite stagnant in terms of fluids, and that we often need a bit of movement and a bit of coming out of our heads and into our body before really being able to drop into restorative practices with full presence awareness. And then the last chapter is good vibrations. So brings sounding into practice, brings the throat in particular, which is such a key part of both our immune system, the oral microbiome, and also the vibrational aspect that really supports the throat, the upper chest, in terms of the whole respiratory tract, and also moving through meeting our stressors, our traumas, to look at there's more of those connections between the nervous system and the immune and respiratory health there. So as a brief overview, and you can see that this is a diagram, like a scheme that's at the front of the book that shows how all of these aspects are interlinked and they intertwine. So as with everything, you know, everything in terms of our body, our experience, nothing is linear. It all feeds in and back. And you can see here right at the center, we've got the immune system, the respiratory system, and the autonomic nervous system sitting in between. So that interface that we can really have a relationship with through our breath, very much part of the yoga canon and yoga therapy, is that we have this beautiful system within yoga, within mindfulness, that allows us to interface with ourselves through our nervous system, our breath, and then be able to have this dance, this communication with functions like the immune and respiratory system, and how these tie into other systems like lymphatics and digestive systems. This just really ties in, is complementary to my previous book, Yoga Therapy for Digestive Health, and that other course that I also run with Yoga Campus as well. So just a brief mention of the way that the practices within the book, and the kind of the way that the format, the rhythm of it goes throughout those 6 parts. The practices all follow kind of engaged, embodied practices, so melding somatic practices, often more fluid, explorative way of moving, without any emphasis on athleticism or getting to a certain point, or they all work within a functional, usual range of motion, which makes them incredibly accessible for everybody. At the end of each part of the book, there's a self-reflective practice. So there are 5 self-inquiry questions, and for you to consider alongside. So some of them, yes, will be anatomical, bodily, but many of them are also inquiring into our states, which really helps us notice our practice in terms of our own boundaries, in terms of our needs, not what we can do, but you know, what is appropriate moment to moment. And then at the end of each part, there are resources. So I read a lot around other teachers' work. I've done a lot of study with other teachers, and so all of those resources are at the end of each book, and also, you know, it's fully referenced. There's about 400 references throughout, so it's there's lovely, you know, ways that you can expound out from here. So the book is available to pre-order now, coming out in October 2022, and the next Yoga Campus that goes alongside it corresponds with that, so that'll be November 2022. And the course and the book are complementary to the content of Yoga Therapy for Digestive Health book, and the next course for the Digestive Health with Yoga Campus is the one before the Immune and Respiratory Health one in September. So I hope that's been of help. I'm going to go through each of the parts, both the kind of theory and the practice parts, for each of them in subsequent videos. So hope you can join me for those. Thank you.